Kelsey Mitchell, Unrivaled League. The Evolution and Innovation, Jonathan Kolb, New York Liberty. Indiana Fever, Game 3, Scott Agnes, and the Indiana Fever medical report of Caitlin Clark and shutting the season down. We'll cover that and more today on the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. First thing I want to tell everybody, TGIF, it's Friday. Corporate America, put your jeans on, right? Sit back, relax, go over some reports, make sure everything's lined up, get ready for Monday morning. It's going to be a busy week next week. However, the Indiana Fever, Kelsey Mitchell, has made the announcement that she's going to play in the Unrivaled League. And Money Mike says, hey, well, that was surprising, but I think the Unrivaled League is gaining some position with the CBA and making the announcement who's going to play where and where the lockout will be. But nevertheless, Mitchell's an outstanding ball player and really can play well in 3-on-3. And folks, I'll give you my opinion, right? Which, if it turns to truth, then I've given you the facts long before it's happened. And I want everybody to get some clarity of what's going on and what's happening in the CBA and what's happening with Unrivaled and what's happening with all these players' injuries as you build up into it. So with Kelsey Mitchell going over to Unrivaled, the NBA owners have kind of stated they want one or the other. You go pick one. To me, it doesn't really matter who you pick, but pick one is what the owners are saying. And if we still want you, then we'll have you. Well, Kelsey Mitchell doesn't have that problem. That's a franchise point guard. It's Money Mike sees it. It's top of the morning, everybody. I have a little taste of coffee. And why do I want to do that? Because I've been on this battle for a while as to Kelsey Mitchell, what position she can play. And it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you make first team all WNBA. I mean, you can play the combo, the 1, the 2, it doesn't really matter. But now we're talking about putting her in a Unrivaled League. Here's my concern, okay? And I want everybody to really get it. And I want to also get it, when it comes to Caitlin as well. The Unrivaled League plays about 44 games, folks. And this is I've said this time and time again, they keep pushing the needle. This one's not going to work, okay? Then you got the WNBA wants to play 44 games, right? So I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying and how this is breaking down. Then after that, you've got the WNBA Playoffs, right? They want to play, right? And they're expanding that. So by the time you get to where you need to be, 44 games, WNBA preseason games, you're going to play 44, maybe 50 on Unrivaled, right? And then by the time you get to the format of the WNBA playoffs, folks, that's going to be 3 games right there. You got another 5. That's going to make 8. And then if you go 7 games in the series, that's 15. Okay, so by the time I add all of these games up, the women are playing about 125, maybe 150. Right? 150 games by the time you get to the one-on-one and All-Star. Now, let's define Unrivaled basketball from the WNBA basketball, which is 5-on-5. In Unrivaled, folks, you're doing a lot more running. You're running. You're putting miles on that body, and the women are not designed to play 100 games. I don't care what you say. If you go look at the medical reports, the genetics of a male and the genetics of a female, the female body is not designed for that. And also the female body goes through different changes that male body doesn't go through. So why are we having all these injuries? Because you got every player. I'm going to keep it 100. I'll keep it a buck. And every player that I've seen playing Unrivaled has gotten injured. Right, their bodies are breaking down. I'm listening to Lexi Hull, right? Lexi Hull is an all WNBA player. For me and Lexi Hull, after Lexi Hull finished this season now, my advice, player management, you guys say, well, Money Mike does this every day. So it's not gonna confuse me if somebody says they disagree or anything. That doesn't bother me. I'm talking about the player, Lexi Hull, who played Unrivaled, helped her game tremendously. After that, came over to the WNBA, has played her heart out in the WNBA. Then after that season, had to go play in the playoffs. Lexi Hull is letting you know in a very, very, very nice way, I am dead blank tired, which is normally ASS. I am dead tired. I'm like done, right? Because why? You've played too many games. When you start playing games where your body is not conditioned to do it, and it can't be conditioned to do it, you're going to find yourself with a lot of injuries. And you got Breanna Stewart's got injuries. You got Natasha Coward. Everybody, Angel Reese. You know what they're getting? They're getting soft tissues and their backs are going out because you can't go out there and run these women 125 games. NBA owners are smart. They understand. They understand the investment, and they understand what it means to have an asset. When I have the asset, you are my asset. It used to be, it's changed, but in pro sports, you'd see all the football, everybody would wear a property of, right? Well, we've evolved. Evolution has moved us from property of, because that was kind of a slave mentality, but now it's come about that you still are the asset, the product, to the WNBA owner. He's got to protect his asset. And Unrivaled's not going to protect the asset. If you send Caitlin over to Unrivaled, all the injuries that Caitlin has had, that's why Caitlin doesn't even, the model doesn't help Caitlin, because Caitlin cuts, runs, shoots, it doesn't help. And the way Caitlin plays, if you play Caitlin for 60 games, that's a lot of games, folks. That's a lot of games. Now, here's where Money Mike's going to put a cap on it. And I want the WNBA, because here's why I came and got involved in this, for change. I am looking to change what's happening. The women, I want to see them get paid. I want the women to be able to be professionals. I want the women to be able to speak intelligent to the children who are looking at them as role models, right? So you get to the evolution and the innovation of the game. Jonathan Cole. Now, when I looked at this thing, and a long time ago, I've always said, I said, guys, look, coaches, they're not going to make it. I told you half the players in here are not going to be here. I told you flat out. Now, you fired so many coaches, okay? You fired so many coaches now that now you only have a couple coaches left. You got Stephanie White and you got Cheryl Reeve, right? That's what you got standing in the blocks now. Everyone else is going to be a brand new coach, and this is called the evolution, right? Because you had the W. And what Money Mike said was, I'm not going to call the WNBA the W. Why not? Let me tell you why not, folks, because there's a difference. And the WNBA wants to play basketball a certain way. Now, when you get into evolution and innovation, now you're talking technology. And I've always told you, when I look at the WNBA, I see a headquarter in New York. I see 14, 15, 16 locations, right? That's where you have to look at it. And they want to build out, scale out to 32 teams, which would mean 32 locations, right? And when they want to have a standard business model to do it, and I've also shared with you, it's going to increase your capital requirements, right? Because now, to be this owner, you pay an acquisition upward of $325 million. But here's the point that I'm making, and when you get into evolution, evolving, the league is growing, evolving, the valuations of the league are rising rapidly, and they're starting to quote numbers that are getting in the Tesla range, right? Because whenever Money Mike, I look at it and I go through the whole scenario, and somebody comes up and says, well, I got Unrivaled valued at $325 million. First thing I'm going to ask you is, what's the PE ratio, right? It's your price to earnings, right? So you're not making any money, okay? So you're really a startup, really, and I said that before, but you're a startup that has quite a bit of money behind you. It's almost, if I looked at this, what would be a great example would be Dick's Sporting Goods, right? Dick's Sporting Goods came out on the Super Bowl. There was no Dick's Sporting Goods, but they sure ran $30 million of Super Bowl ads because they had the capital requirements met to be able to build this thing out. And now, you look at Dick's Sporting Goods, it's sitting right there with Fanatics and doing brick and mortar, except they've got evolution and innovation. What does that mean? We're not just a Nike store, right? We're not just an Adidas store. We carry all the brands and we collaborate with everyone. So whatever new is coming out, you can get it now. Now, when you get into the innovation, this is where you look at why is AT&T, right? Because everybody thinks, well, Mike, AT&T, you said it time and time again. Folks, we're not out there managing hot dogs, right? We're looking at saying, okay, Who's the city? Somebody's managing the city of Indianapolis, right? Now, because the city of Indianapolis and the WNBA has been running off of copper and pear, right? You're running off of copper and pear. What does that mean? That's the oldest technology that anyone can run off of. And whenever it rains, you're going to get static. You're going to get latency, they call it, in your network. What does that mean? You're going to be slowing down. You can't get clarity. You look like you're on an ISDN, right? So, but here's the thing. Now you got to rip up Indiana because you got the people want to come to Indiana, so Indiana's got to run on fiber, right? So here's where you go. The evolution now is because we have the ability to make more capital. Not only that, we have the ability, if we need more capital, to go get more capital. Now, when you start doing a business or an evolution of a corporate enterprise business in that fashion, what you're going to have is Wall Street, where you get back to the movie, greed is good. Greed is good, and that's what the owners are looking at. And now you got somebody like the New York Liberty. We don't care that you won a championship. That's the least of what we're caring about, right? We are in the business of building out technology that's going to allow our players. I've given you the solution, and that's what dedicated account managers do. They send us out. I'm a suit, right? I'm what you call a suit. They send me out. I'm going to meet with the CEO. I'll do this 3 times a day. This is the funny thing about it. That's why I can listen to Kathy Engelbert. I know exactly where you're going when you go to see Roger Goodell. I can tell you the steps because you're going to do it in phases, right? You don't want to change everything overnight, but then the button came in. But when you get to this point, now you've got to come up as me being the quarterback, and I've met with the city of Indiana, and they've told me exactly what they want to do. They told me how they like to get it built out. They told me how they want to evolve with Caitlin Clark, right? They want to involve their entire community and have it built around Caitlin Clark. That's why it's called the Caitlin Clark Practice Facility, right? But when you do something like this and you evolve, I'm using Indiana as the flagship, right? And that's why I've always told you Indiana is the flagship. Now, what does it mean when you're the flagship? We're going to take one location. We're going to build the blueprint out and the complete standard of everything we want. So now, to be a part of this in the community, okay, what does that do? That means the rental value of property around downtown Indiana is going up wherever there's business or revenue to be made, because Caitlin Clark had started her own economy. So what do the New York Liberty want to do? They want to evolve and innovate so they can build out their own economy, and that's what the women have done. They've done great work. Now, here's the value of all this, is once you start moving into technology and innovation, now, me as a quarterback, I met with the city, I met with the Indiana Fever. Now I'm going to come back to the Indiana Fever. They told me what they wanted to do, and that's all in a discovery meeting. After that, I'm going to go back to the team, and on my team, I got technical data specialists, I got wireless specialists who can go through and look at the innovation of what type of solution would I bring back to the Indiana Fever and the city of Indiana, right? So I'm telling you all this because here's where the WNBA is going. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting, because sooner or later, the WNBA is going to hand out corporate-owned mobility devices. They're going to hand these to you and say, look, anything you do that's represented under our brand of the WNBA, you do it on this device. And we're going to manage this and have content management on this as well. We'll block any threats, any type of harassment, anything like that. We'll put the PD right on it because we're going to track this now. This is where the league is going. And then when that player, who's a great marketing tool, I'll use Juju Watkins, Caitlin Clark, right? Great marketing. You've got Dominique Moulanga back there in France, right? That player should be able to communicate directly and hit a button and tell the fans, Angel Reese, same thing. Hey, come on out to the game tonight and buy tickets right here. And when you do that, now guess what? You can also have the player sell the WNBA League Pass. The player could sell ESPN package or ION or whoever it is. This is evolving, and then you're doing innovation. What is innovation? It's called a vertical integrated solution. A vertical integrated solution means instead of having 5 different vendors, why don't I just operate with one, make it universal? I got one, we call it one throat to choke, right? If I'm running point and I've got managing your account, you don't have to call anybody. I got full autonomy. If we do the billing wrong and it's a $5,000 credit, I'll go cut your credit, right? This is where the league is moving off of copper and pair. I wanted to go through that because everybody's wondering, well, why did they fire Sandy Brondello? Sandy wanted to do it her way. New York Liberty, they're very intelligent, man. They did a 3-year plan, got a championship. So they're not really going to be interested. It's kind of like Jimmy Johnson, right? It could be death by 1,000 cuts. There's no doubt about it, because when Jimmy saw, Jimmy Johnson won 2 for the Cowboys, okay, Jerry said, I can get anybody. Well, you got the New York Liberty saying, you know what, we can get anybody because we're our culture and community, and the owners from Hong Kong, they do business differently. We are not in the business of you telling us what to do, right? And then it gets into politics and culture, and there's all kind of stuff floating around this thing, right? So I wanted to cover that. What was he saying? A lot of people are going, what is he saying? Evolution and innovation. I want to give you a breakdown and how that really goes. You got Kelsey, we talked about that. Now, Scott Agnes. All right, so everybody's blowing me up. Mike, what is the rule? What is the rule, Mike, to Caitlin Clark and her return to play in the WNBA playoffs? Now, here's the thing. Caitlin Clark has changed this entire game. And folks, I'm going to tell you, there is no rule. There is no rule that's sitting there concrete that I can go look at. It's in the bylaw, Rule 31, Section 8. Paragraph 10, right? You're not going to find that. But here's what you got. Whenever I can't find something in the WNBA, it's easy for me to do. I just go look in the NBA because that's who's making the rules, right? And for Caitlin and Scott Agnes, okay, here's the deal. And it started all with John the Liquid Grader. I told Scott, don't bite. But Scott took liberty, called Rachel, and I guess Rachel, who has been doing this for a while, but Scott needed to have validation. Scott Agnes needed to have validation. So he asked Rachel to ask these questions to him. So when he answered these questions, he could justify what he was trying to tell the Indiana Fever fans. Now, you got to ask yourself, why would Scott do this? Why would he want to do this, right? Why is Scott Agnes in there justifying who he is? So, and folks, here's the deal. Right, it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal because Scott is supposed to be the beat writer. It's like being the beat cop, right? You're the beat cop that's walking the beat, right, on 25 blocks in San Francisco, right? You're the beat cop. You know everything's going on, who's doing what. You go back, your superiors ask, you give them the truth, right? But Scott's got a double dipper going, which is the new way of media today. What does that mean? You may work for the Indy Star, and then you may work for the Fieldhouse Files, which is your own business, right? And it got into a conflict of interest where no one could understand what was going on with Caitlin Clark, right? And Money Mike just says, I can find out. It's not going to be hard for me to find out because I know how to go about it, and being the fact that I come from that world, and I still know how to do it politically correct without using profanity, without breaking a code of standard. Now, here's the problem. Scott Agnes went on there and said, Caitlin Clark's done, it's because of a bone bruise. Okay? That's what he did. I repeat that. Scott Agnes said, Caitlin Clark is not coming back, and it's because of a bone bruise. Right? Now, here's what Scott did. And I don't know if he wanted to do it intentionally. Here would be my question. Because I don't know if the Indy Star and the Indiana Fever have a great relationship. Because somebody broke a story early last year, Caitlin Clark's pad and stats. So I think there's a contentious relationship sitting between the Indiana Fever and the Indy Star that Scott Agnes has got caught up into. But to answer the fans' question, there is no rule. It's subjective. Right? Because here's the subjectiveness of the subjectiveness of the subjectiveness of the rule. I said it 3 times. Okay. Here's the way it works. The WNBA say, give us a list. Who's on your playoff roster? Right? The Indiana Fever, give them a list. This is who's on our playoff roster. Now, when you do that, what they're saying in the WNBA is there are no hardship signings. Right? There's no hardship signings after you give us that list, right? So now you've given them the list. There's no hardship signings. these are our injured players. These are the players we're going to go with. Okay, but here's a caveat. And you always look at it. I remember I learned this I think I learned this in law. Yeah, it's caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. So what happens in that situation there is you got Bibby who's out, and then you got Dantas who's out, but Bibby's been out. You got Caitlin who's been put out, right? So the Indiana Fever never had to put Caitlin Clark out. I repeat, folks, they didn't have to put Caitlin Clark out. They could have left Caitlin Clark on the roster and kept going, but they decided we're going to put Caitlin out. Now, here's where Money Mike comes in. Because I got a little tired of going back and forth, folks. I got a little tired, so I'm going to flush you out. And being the fact that I've been around the game, I know how to flush out what I need to know. And I know how to ask it the way it should be asked, politically correct. Because Money Mike's got to maintain a standard. I thank you guys here on the Money Mike Syndicated Podcast. If you're just tuning in, we love you. Your comments are welcome. No matter how bad you say your comment, I'm still going to give you a like, because at the end of the day, love conquers all. And I'm not going to get it right 100% of the time, but we want you to be able to speak your mind, and we want to come back and give you the truth. Right? So here's the funny deal about this whole situation. In the subjectiveness, because whenever Kathy Engelbert says yes, I guess you can bring Caitlin back if you choose. But now that you get through the playoffs and other players get injured, right? Let's say Gabby gets injured, or let's say Ariel Powers gets injured. Boom. Now you don't have a hardship signing that you can go to. But what the subjectiveness of the rule, if you have a player that's on the roster, that's been on the injured list, and throughout this entire time period of the first round and the second round and the third round, okay, you cannot go out and sign a hardship player. Okay, now the bad news is if you get 3, 4, 5 players injured, you're going to be out of luck, because you're going to be getting close to forfeiting the game. So the NBA doesn't want to forfeit, but what they said is you can take one of your injured players, follow this out, who are now healthy, and reactivate them to the roster. Okay, that's the subjectiveness of the subjectiveness of the subjectiveness. Now, back to Scott Agnes. Scott, I don't know Scott Agnes, okay, and I'm sure he's a great gentleman. Does a great job, covers the Pacers. Okay, he's a part of the media, is credentialed. I know John was questioning, okay, you're credentialed, I'm not, what does it mean when you're credentialed? Well, credential gives you access throughout the entire building, right? But then the Indiana Fever like to do things a different way, right? Because, I heard Rachel, who was interviewing Scott, says, my husband plays in the NBA, then Rachel knows. And what Rachel didn't do, and I'm going to bring that out here on Scott's answer with the bone bruise, she did a follow-up question, and she didn't. But Rachel knows if her husband plays in the NBA, folks, that's how it works. Media can go in and watch practice. You got no problem in the NBA you watching practice. If you want to interview a player from another team, you give them that in advance, they'll set it up. These are the times, right? And so at the end of the day, you see what you see, you report what you see, and then the player got to come out and speak on it, right? Because at the end of the day, Caitlin should be speaking on her own injury. Now, here's the problem. Scott Agnes sat back and said, Caitlin Clark is done. She's got a bronze boost. She's not playing anymore. Okay, Indiana Fever fans, whatever your trip is, and he's pissed them off, right? He's pissed off. How can the Indy Star piss off, the local beat writer piss off its own fans? That's a whole new story, right? I don't know why that happened. But, Scott, when you do a statement like that, you got to give us a source. Okay, is a source. Because really, what you did, and here's where you get flushed out. Because Money Mike flushed it out. I said, well, guys, you know what? They might have didn't put Caitlin on the roster. That's how I flushed it out. But I think that if they go to the finals, then they may be able to reactivate Caitlin. That's a strong statement. Now, Money Mike, I keep it clean, so you can find me on CNBC. You can find me on Yahoo Sports. You can find me over there on YouTube. You're going to find me everywhere, right? Because I keep it clean. I keep it politically correct, and I don't use profanity. And I believe all things are possible to those who believe, right? But, Scott, you don't have a source, right? And this is a problem. Now, what Rachel should have done, because she's been around the game. This is not her first rodeo either. She should have followed up and said, Scott, what's your source? Okay? Because here's the deal. You will take a situation like this. Now you got Rob Lundberg, and I'm starting to figure out the circle of how it works, and it's okay. It's okay. It works, right? You got Rob Lundberg, right, spinning a wheel, saying Caitlin's done based off what Scott says, and then you got them trying to piggyback and push Chloe Miller, I think, around, and well, I don't listen to Chloe Miller, I don't do that. Well, you got it, man. It's an internal, it's a nightmare, right? Because when you get into becoming a reporter, all right, and then you got to look at it a couple different ways because there's levels to this, right? I mean, for Money Mike, I started in print. So for me, it's the old school. I mean, I go all the way back to a library card. You pull it out, you get the information, you got to go do the research, and then you got to turn it in. You turn it into the editor. The editor may like it or not like it, or he may just push it through, right? And if you keep it clean, all the different platforms that Money Mike operates on, they give me an automatic approval, right? Because they know that this transcript and his consistency is not going to get out of control. But when Agnes doesn't give us a source, here's what Scott Agnes just did. He just called the Indiana Fever liars. I don't know if he intended to do that, but Scott Agnes just called the Indiana Fevers liars, right? Because he said it's the bone bruise, right? So now you got to be cautious, all right? Because I'm sitting there listening to the 49ers press game for the week, and you've got Kyle Shanahan announcing injuries, and then all of a sudden you got a guy that's doing reporting. He's a medical doctor. This guy's reporting on the NFL, asking Kyle medical questions, and Kyle knows it. And the guy says, "Look, you know I have a medical degree," and he says, "I know you do, right?" So this, when you get to the injuries of a player, right? I don't never want to be caught up in reporting on no player's injury without any source of facts, right? In this situation, when normally. And it's different, folks, in the NFL. If I'm there with the Raiders, I'm there sitting with the Niners, this thing's different, okay? Because you can't just throw out somebody's got an injury and you don't have a source and you're working for that particular source, which is the Indy Star. You've got to have the facts to back up what you're saying. Because my first question now to Christy Sides, so Christy Sides, it looks like Caitlin Clark's out with a bone bruise, and why didn't you tell us that, right? Well, I didn't know. And then all of a sudden she's jammed up, right? So you're going to jam up Stephanie White in the post-game press conference because now they're going, well, wait a minute, you're telling me Caitlin Clark, this ankle's been the whole time? Now, Money Mike already told you it's been misdiagnosed, right? Misdiagnosed an injury. And now you're getting all the way to this point, and this is the sad part about it. Because back in the day, the way it worked in the print, whoever's the first break the story, right? You're the first. You get the credit for the story. The story came off of you. You're the main source. Now, you've got to be a credible source to be there, right? So when I'm working with Bleacher Report, and I'm out there and I'm working under the credential of SAC Cultural Hub, Bleacher Report must disclose that this is firsthand Michael Walker, as a credentialed sports writer, is getting this information. This is where it gets dangerous for Scott, because Scott mentioned he held back information. As a reporter, you should not hold back information. You've been given the privilege to go in there. It's a sacred privilege. You report what you see, and this is where it's a little different from the NBA and the WNBA, because I guess the WNBA or the Indiana Fever have closed practices because they should have at least 50 or 100 media people in there. And this is what I mean. When you get to the Lakers, a storied franchise of the NBA, they got 200 reporters in there covering that. 200 reporters are watching practice. So there's no confusion on the story. The Indiana Fever, based upon the relationship with the Indy Star, based upon the relationship with Rob Lundberg with Sports Illustrated, which is another credible source, right? They're out there reporting their own stuff, and they're being their own sources. And there's no medical doctor involved. So when I look at Rob Lundberg and he reports, Caitlin Clark is definitely done, now da-da-da-da-da, well, where's your source? It's got to be a medical, right? Where's the second opinion, right? Because NFL players, if they don't like the first opinion, they got the second opinion. Where's your third opinion? What you're doing, folks, is you're reporting information that's untrue, right? Because you don't have any penalty for it. And when you get caught doing it, now you're just like, well, it's not my fault, right? And that's bad business, no matter how you look at it. Let's get on to game 3. Man, I went backwards and forwards on this game, coming on home to Indiana. I kind of told everybody nobody's ever been here, okay? They haven't been through the process. And everybody said, wait a minute, Mike, what are you talking about? Well, Kelsey Mitchell went to the playoffs last year, right? They went to the playoffs last year. This year, you got Kelsey Mitchell riding out. It's a 1-1 ball game. You're in the second round. Nobody's been here. Nobody's been here, right? And you got to look at the process. So you got to look at the Boston Celtics. How many times they had to go to playoffs? Could try to get it right, Boston Celtics couldn't get it right. Had to change the coach, right? Had to tone out, had to promote Brad Stevens, right? Get him up there as president and let somebody else coach these guys because guess what? He couldn't get it done in the process, right? So here you go now. Indiana Fever, untreasured water. You got them coming to the field house. You can get in there and just get this game. I mean, I'm telling you, like I told you, A'ja Wilson is a fantastic player. A'ja Wilson is a beast. But I got a whole lot of confidence in Timpson. Why? Because that's what I teach. And a lot of guys, here's where it gets to, folks. When people look at games, most people look at offense. I could care less. And a lot of times I'll tell you about coaching these girls and everything. This was about me walking away to when Adidas told these young women in Sacramento that we have no money, no use for you, okay? I went from the men to the women. And the only way I know how to do it is everybody's trips paid for. We're all fully sponsored because I got to cut you, I'm going to cut you, right? But at the end of the day, you build into something and you want to make this where it's a good game for everybody, right? And so now with the Indiana Fever, I mean, you're built into this now. You can't turn around. And you can't make excuses, and you can't go there. And I know people have questioned, right? And they have questions. They say, Mike, well, players talk about other players' greatness all the time. Not really. I haven't. Maybe you got a different player. Maybe you've got a different player. The player might say, that game is nice, but you're not going to do a full interview with another player that's going to sit down and talk to you about how great this player is. Now, with the Indiana Fever, that's your teammate. If you want to talk about greatness in your teammate, right, you're not going to get it. That's why you'll never get Natasha Cloud to sit down and do an hour interview of how great Caitlin Clark is, right? And you got the stud buds, they're over there, but they're also trying to beat you too, so they're trying to soften you up before they beat you. But game 3, this is getting interesting. It's a 1-1 game. You get this one tonight, you can close out and go to the finals. Indiana Fever have not been to the finals, folks, in a while. Right? What are you talking about? 212? 212, right? You got to look at that. In 212, okay? We're in 225. It's 13, almost 14 years ago since they've been crowned as the WNBA champions. They can get back. I mean, it's a wild world. I mean, they've got to just go play. And Boston, I laid that out, folks. I mean, Boston's a great player. But when Boston get tired, Boston plays 3 feet, stops switching. So Stephanie White's got to look at the minute count, right? Because sometimes you get all the players who are not playing. Okay, this is a good thing I'm going to bring to you. You get some of the players who are not playing, ordering all this good food and put it in front of the players who are playing. The players like to eat too, right? So the Indiana Fever got to watch their diets. I mean, they got a lot of stuff to winning a championship, and you got to have luck. Do they have the luck of the Irish tonight? I don't know. Okay, can Kelsey Mitchell carry it at home? Yes. But who's also an Indiana Fever killer? Man, I saw Jew Lloyd light it up for 36, right? You're going to have to contain these animals. And then at the end of the day, folks, Nalissa Smith is coming home. Nalissa Smith got this on the calendar. Nalissa Smith been waiting on this. There ain't no greater tribute for Nalissa Smith than the bump off. I'm talking about bump off the Indiana Fever, who dogged me, didn't believe in me, didn't care about me, didn't want me, didn't need me. What did Money Mike tell? I said, you're going to deal with this problem one day. You're going to deal with this problem one day. And now you got to deal with it, and Taj has got to deal with it. Because the Indiana Fever wrote checks, and Taj got to be able to cash. And both of them, I told you, boy, you talk about blocking shots. Man, I looked at that film again. You got Nalissa Smith and A'ja Wilson. They both telling Taj you ain't going to get nothing here. So now it's game time. I've told Indiana Fever, get your cowbells now. Get your cowbells. If you bring them cowbells and get loud, and man, them courtside fans stand up, start cheering. You got a right to cheer. Okay, and this isn't kindergarten. This is the pros. And this is my house. I run my house the way I want to run my house. And Las Vegas Aces, you run your house the way you want to run your house, right? That's how the game is played, folks. This game 3 is showtime. They're going to get it in. One team's going to win, one team's going to lose, one team's going to say, hey, we did what we had to do. Other team's going to have a bunch of excuses of why they didn't win, right? And for the Indiana Fever, I always tell you, it's not the officials. You don't really have to worry about that, because at the end of the day, folks, I come from the concrete jungle, and these guys would get in there, and I'm young, but they'd pick me, right, because I could shoot. But they'd pick me, and then they'd be asking, well, do you want to play the game with fouls or you want to play without fouls? Now, they're betting money. I played games literally where there's no fouls. You just have to play. You're going to get hacked. You learn how to finish. You learn a lot about yourself, right? So with tonight, I think the Indiana Fever are going to show who they are. I think Stephanie White's got a huge task. Don't do anything that will get the Fever fans upset. Let it play out. Get yourself a glass of Gatorade or water or juice or tea and sit down and relax, because there's nothing you can do that's going to change the outcome now. Whatever the Indiana Fever players are going to do, they're going to do. That's the bottom line. Whatever the Ace is going to do, we're going to do. And the only thing I tell her is don't let Becky punk you, because Becky's going to try to gain an advantage tonight. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. Folks, I enjoy you coming in. I enjoy being with you. I really hope I gave you something that you didn't hear before. And we'll stay at it. We got game days today. I love it, no doubt about it. You know, my 49ers are 3-0. There's nothing finer than to be a 49er. You know, and that I tell you right there, you know, I expect a lot from the Indiana Fever, and here's why I enjoy it. Because the San Francisco 49ers are the #1 leading organization in the NFL. Always remember this: nobody treats their players better than anyone than the San Francisco 49ers. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. came on in. His daddy, Eddie DeBartolo, bought the team, and he said, you know what? You know how you win? You got to treat your players right. The Indiana Fever are treating the players right. Now the players have a duty and responsibility to go win. We're going to find out how that's going to go tonight, but I always tell you this. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. I'm going to tell you all things are possible to those who believe. I believe in the Indiana Fever. I think the Ace is going to show up. I think the Fever are going to take them down. And then after that, close them out. I mean, you at the end of the day, when you get a dog down, put the dog down. In boxing, when he's hurt, you got to go get him, right? In the Indiana Fever, the Vegas wants to box, but you can't let them. This is your house. This is our rules. These are our fans, okay? If you wanted to be at home, go win. But guess what? We got the home field advantage now. We got home court, so we're going to win it. I'm pulling for him. We'll see what happens. And I've answered that and just wrapping up, stepping back. We talked about a lot. Kelsey Mitchell, Unrivaled, careful, don't play too many games. Evolution versus Innovation. New York Liberty fired Sandy Bordello. I know where they're going with that one. Scott Agnes, man, you took the bait. You gave out a medical resort, bone bruise. The team didn't announce it, but you gave full autonomy that says you have the authority. You got to put a medical source behind it, and you've got to put where, who, what, when, where, and why. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. All things are possible to those who believe, and Scott knows that. He works the Pacers. This is nothing new for him. This is just him coming over to WNBA, and when you get into women's basketball, folks in 212, they straighten me out. That's why I love it. I've coached them. I can speak to them in a way that other people can't. But because I've coached these women, they will understand what Coach Mike is saying. Coach Mike is telling us, look, we got to lock up, right? There's a certain way that you talk to women, but you also got to know a lot about them. And what really helped me, and I'll wrap up here, folks, is I started to understand what their favorite food was, what's their favorite color, who's their best friend, what's the car you like, what's your favorite movie. Once I started understanding more about the player, and they know that you have a genuine love for them. That's why I saw Angel Reese pull off Tyler Moore. I'm talking about, it's a 230-pound man. You are not going to get my coach, right? That's a bond and an affection that's there. Now, if somebody comes along and they break that, you can speculate. Angel Reese not going anywhere because the sponsor is going to be there. But this ain't about no Angel Reese. You know what this is about? It's about the Indiana Fever winning the WNBA championship. You cannot, Money Mike's going to rap, but you cannot be in a 1-1 series. Do you know what that means, folks? You win 2 and 3, that you are 5 games away from a WNBA championship. Who wants it better? It's Jim Harbaugh and the San Diego Chargers, head coach of former San Francisco 49ers, head coach of Michigan Wolverines, took the Niners to the Super Bowl, won the national championship over there at Michigan, and now he's head coach of the San Diego Chargers. There's one thing Jim says that the Indiana Fever must acknowledge and recognize as players in an organization. Who's got it better than us? That's his slogan. Who's got it better than us? And that's coming from Jack Harbaugh. Okay, you got John, and he's got his brother up there, the Harbaugh coaching the Baltimore Ravens. Funny thing about the Harbaughs, they win. Indiana Fever, it's time to win. We'll see you soon.